The Mercedes EQC is a large luxury SUV that's fully electric, but it's very much a product typical of the three-pointed star. Direct rivals shade it in certain areas, but it's difficult to beat in terms of driving refinement and interior finish. And class competitive in terms of things like driving range, cabin practicality and charging time replenishment. It is, in almost every way, the Mercedes of EVs.
Can this really be a 2.5-ton SUV? Certainly doesn't feel like it, as 62 miles an hour flashes by in just 5.1 seconds as the EQC hurls itself at the horizon. This car's 80 kilowatt-hour battery is of slightly lower capacity than the ones you'll find in its two biggest rivals, the Jaguar I-Pace and the Audi e-tron Quattro 55, but the powertrain here has been tweaked for greater torque, so this Mercedes feels every bit as eager as its opposition. There's 765 Newton meters of it, that's about the same as you get in a Porsche Cayenne Turbo, and a total output of 408 horsepower or 300 kilowatts. In keeping with its nominal positioning as an SUV, the EQC does have four-wheel drive, although that's rather nominal too. It's delivered as a byproduct of having an electric motor on each axle. The front one is tuned for economy and it drives the car on its own when range is a priority. The motor at the back, meanwhile, cuts in when power and speed are needed, or of course when there's a need for extra traction. As usual in an EV, driving modes proliferate, and there are 5 dynamic select settings and, via 2 steering wheel paddles, 5 further brake recuperation options, all of which does sound confusing, but it won't be if you merely let the car do its own thing and you choose max range from the dynamic select menu and D-Auto brake recuperation. Both of these programs combine together with clever Eco Assist software to really maximize the distance that you can travel between your charges. That's WLTP rated at 259 miles. Recharging via an AC household wall box takes around 11 hours, while at a DC quick charge station you'll get an 80% charge in about 40 minutes. Not quite so clever is the comparatively old tech and therefore rather heavy chassis that this car has to borrow from a conventional Mercedes GLC, which also means that this EV can't offer the air suspension system which does feature on most of its direct rivals. Would you know this to be a Mercedes? Well, possibly not. What the company calls an avant-garde and distinct look simply appears somewhat generic from a distance, but up close, a more brand-specific design charisma does shine through. Now, size-wise, the EQC sits between the Mercedes brand's mid-sized GLC and large GLE SUV models. It shares most with the GLC, although it's 100mm longer, but like its main European rivals, it can only take 2 rows of seats. As usual, of course, what's more significant is the stuff you can't see. Now, some of it is very sophisticated, principally the 384-cell, 80 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion Deutsche Accumotive battery, which weighs a substantial 652 kilos and sits in the floor between the axles. And some of it isn't, primarily a steel structure and suspension setup lifted directly from the GLC Mercedes SUV model, so that this car can be produced alongside that one at the brand's German Bremen plant. Take a seat up front and you'll find the usual widescreen cockpit with MBUX media connectivity that features in all modern Mercedes cars, in this case featuring 2 seamlessly joined 10.25-inch screens. But the overall cabin feel is subtly different than it would be in, say, a GLC or a GLE, thanks to ribbed silver trimming, blue and rose gold detailing and trendy eco-minded materials. An extra EQ tile has been added to the central infotainment screen, and via this it's possible to monitor things like charging current, departure times and energy flow, plus you can pull up a consumption histogram. EQ Savvy Intelligence has also been added into the impressive Hey Mercedes voice control system, so you can quiz it on battery status or ask it where the nearest charging station is. Over-the-shoulder vision isn't ideal, so you will need the standard rear view camera and parking sensors, but the seats are supportive and there's plenty of cabin storage space. Right, time to take a seat in the rear. Well, legroom is merely adequate for this class of car, As for headroom, well, that is slightly compromised by the swept-back silhouette and by the floor that's raised to accommodate the battery pack beneath it. Still, we think that only very lofty folk required to spend very long trips back here will be minded to complain very much. And even they have the option of improving things by reclining the seat backs. So let's finish by taking a look at cargo space. Press the Mercedes three-pointed star and the tailgate glides up to reveal a 500-litre trunk. Neat catches are provided on the cargo bay sidewalls for when you want to completely flatten the rear bench, which then folds almost flush to the floor to free up 1,060 litres of capacity. It's fortunate for Mercedes that its premium brand rivals have been equally tardy about joining the EV revolution. Can they provide a better, large, electrically powered luxury SUV than this one? Well, after trying an EQC, you might decide not. It might not be the most boldly innovative choice like a Jaguar I-Pace or a Tesla Model X, but in some ways it's a more appealing package. After all, you get a nicer cabin than the Jag and it offers better build quality than the Tesla. And both of the other two key contenders in this segment, the BMW iX3 and the Audi e-tron, offer a shorter potential operating range. Saving the planet isn't really on the agenda here. Unlike fuel cell technology, the concept of electrification is fundamentally flawed in that regard. But an EQC can claim to halve the environmental impact a car of this kind would normally have, which is no mean feat. Rivals claim the same, of course, but this model has the added advantage of being a Mercedes first and foremost. And for a certain kind of buyer, that difference is likely to be decisive.